Good morning. A warm welcome to all. Meanwhile, we shall have a small glance of our KITS Warangal right now. AV, please.
Namaskar. A very good morning to one and all. I am Satvik of EC third year and his Vaibhav of final year EC department. I extend my heartily welcome to each and everyone to inaugural ceremony of Springer 4th International Conference on Computer and Communication Technologies IC3T 2022.
Once again, good morning to all. Hi Satvika, how are you doing?
Fine. Vaibhav, do you know what and why we gathered here?
Yes Satvika, today Department of ICE is organizing 4th International Conference on Computer and Communication Technologies at KITSW Warangal.
Exactly. Do you know what exactly an international conference means?
Yes Satvika, I'll share my views what I know about International Conference. International Conference is a platform to share latest and innovative ideas with peers and senior group of people from different parts of world through presentation.
True Vaibhav, in addition to the points which are given by Vaibhav, every international conference undergoes with the registration process by highly qualified editorial board and organizing committee who takes a decision after reviewing the received abstracts and topics for the presentation.
The Department of ECE of this institute is organizing prestigious international conference IC3D 2022 on today and tomorrow. And these proceedings will be published in the Scopus Indexed Springer lectures on networks and systems.
With these words, we would like to hand over the dais to the respected faculty for further proceedings.
Thank you all for giving this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vaibhav and Satvika. Myself, Dr. K. Saujanya, Assistant Professor in the Department of ECE. Good morning to you all. I take privilege in once again welcoming all the invited guests, deans, HODs of various departments, faculty and participants to this inauguration of 4th International Conference on Computer and Communication Technologies 2022, organized by Department of ECE at Kakatiya Institute of Technology and Science, Warangal. Today, here we have the eminent guests, Captain V. Lakshmikant Rao Garu, Chairman, KITS Warangal and MP Rajya Sabha, Sri P. Narayana Reddy Garu, Treasurer, KITS Warangal, Professor N.V. Ramana Rao Garu, Director, NIT Warangal, the chief guest of today's function, and Dr. K. Srujan Raju Garu, Professor and HOD of CSE and IT, CMR Technical Campus, today's guest of honor. Thank you, sir, for being part of this inauguration. And here we also have two more guests joining with us virtually. A professor from Heroit Watt University, UK, Dr. Matini Sellaturai Garu, and another from KIT Bhubaneswar, Dr. Suresh Chandra Satpathy Garu. Dr. Matini Sellaturai and Dr. Suresh Chandra Satpathy Garu are the keynote speakers of today's session. I cordially welcome the conference chair and principal of KITS Warangal, Professor K. Ashoka Reddy Garu, HOD, Department of ECE and Program Chair, Dr. M. Raju Garu, and Dr. B. Ramadevi, Professor in ECE and Program Chair, IC3T 2022. I request all the dignitaries to light the lamp and grace the dais. I also request the conveners Dr. V. Raju Reddy and Dr. B. Dhanalakshmi and co-conveners Dr. C. H. Sridevi and Dr. T. Sunil Kumar, assistant professors in the Department of ECE, to join the dignitaries. I request Sri B. Komaraya, assistant professor, Department of ECE, to sing invocation song.
महागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि महागणपतिम् वसिष्ठवामदेवादिवन्दितसानीस ससरिग महागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि महादेवसुतं महादेवसुतं गुरुगुहनुतं मारकोटि प्रकाशं शान्तं महाकाव्यनाटकादिप्रियं मूषिकवाहनमोदकप्रियं महागणपतिं मनसा स्मरामि.
Thank you, Comrade sir. Thank you, sirs. Thank you, ma'am. Let's greet our dignitaries on the dais with potted plants. I request B. Neeraja to greet our beloved chairman, Captain V. Lakshmikant Rao garu. Neeraja. I request Sri P. Raviteja, Assistant Professor in Department of ECE, to greet our Treasurer Sri P. Narayana Reddy garu. I request Sri B. Komaraya sir to greet our Honorable Chief Guest Professor N.V. Ramana Rao garu. I request Aisha Tabasum to greet our guest of honor, Dr. K. Srujan Raju garu. I request B. Neeraja to greet our principal sir, Professor K. Ashoka Reddy garu. I request Sri D. Santosh Kumar to greet our HOD, Dr. M. Raju sir. I request Aisha Tabasum to greet Dr. B. Ramadevi madam. I now invite Dr. B. Ramadevi madam, Professor in ECE, Program Chair IC3T 2022, to present a brief report on the conference.
Greetings of the day. A warm welcome to you all. Heartily welcome to you all to Scopus Index Springer IC3T 2022, organized by the Department of ECE KITS Warangal in association with Springer Lecture Notes in Networks and Systems. We are very happy for submitting your original research papers to reputed publishers like Springer. Previously, Department of ECE successfully organized Scopus Indexed International Conference on Data Engineering and Communication Technology ICDET 2020, and the proceedings were published in Springer LNDEC. I thank all the authors for submitting their original research work to our conference. We received 325 plus quality research papers from 19 states in India and 11 abroad countries. It is hectic task to select best papers out of them. We selected 53 best papers from 14 states and 8 countries by 3 blind review process. We are unable to select good papers submitted by the authors due to the conditions of Springer. We are unable to accommodate more number of good papers from our campus too. We requested for second volume approval from Springer. Due to that, there was a slight delay in communication. We thank all the faculty, researchers and scientists in India and abroad for submitting their valuable research papers to our conference. I express my gratitude to the management and principal sir for giving me this opportunity. I personally thank IC3T 2022 editorial board members, Professor Manthini Seladurai from UK and Professor Bobby George, IIT Madras, Professor K. Ashoka Reddy sir and Professor K. Srujan Raju sir. I am grateful to international and national advisory committee members, reviewers, all my IC3T team, our head Professor M. Raju, coordinators Dr. V. Raju and Dr. Dhanalakshmi, co-coordinators Dr. R. Sridevi and Dr. Sunil. And I also thank my department faculty, staff, session chairs, Kids Warangal family members, students, and press for their wonderful support. Have a great day at IC3T 2022 at KITSW. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Dr. M. Raju, HOD, ECE, and Program Chair IC3T 2022 to speak few words on this occasion.
A very good morning to all. The respected dignitaries on the dais, respected Captain V. Lakshmikanta Rao sir, Honorable ex-MP Rajya Sabha, Chairman KITS Warangal, respected P. Narayan Reddy sir, Treasurer KITS Warangal, today's chief guest Professor N.V. Ramana Rao sir, Director NIT Warangal, the keynote speakers of today's sessions, Dr. Shalatu Rai, Professor from UK, and Dr. Suresh Chandra Satsapati, Professor and Dean, Research KIT Bhubaneswar, and guest of honor, Dr. K. Sujan Raju, Professor and Head of the Department of CSE, CMR Technical Campus, Hyderabad, and Professor K. Ashok Reddy sir, Principal, KITS Warangal, Dr. B. Ramadevi Madam, Program Chair, IC3T, and conveners, co-conveners, deans, HODs, and my dear colleagues and participants. A warm welcome you all on the inaugural ceremony of International Conference on Computer and Communication Technology 2022. At the outset, I would like to congratulate all the authors for their great research contribution and shortlisting their research work to present in the conference. In this prestigious platform, I would like to present a brief profile of the department. The department is established in the year 2000 and offering one PG and one UG program. The department has 12 state-of-the-art laboratories consisting of sophisticated and advanced equipment. The department having 37 dedicated and well-qualified faculty members, among which 17 having the doctoral degrees, and most of the faculty are actively pursuing their research. The faculty of the department are handling various research projects funded by the various funding agencies. The department also having AICT funded models, laboratories, and regularly the department organizes various programs such as conferences, workshop, hackathons, faculty development program, and many more to explore the talents among the students and the research community. This international conference is organized by the department in collaboration with the Springer, and the conveners of the conference and their team have put their tireless efforts to make this event possible at our campus. The conference IC3T is a boundless platform to explore the knowledge among the research community. So all the best to the participants. So thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Professor K. Ashok Reddy Garu, Principal and Conference Chair, to address the gathering.
Good morning. Warm welcome to all of you. Respectable pranams to most respected Chairman of this institute, Captain V. Lakshmikanta Rao Garu. Respected Treasurer of this institute, Shri P. Narayan Reddy Garu. And respected Chief Guest of today's inaugural session, Professor N.V. Ramana Rao Garu, Director NIT Warangal. Dr. Suresh Chandra Satsapati Garu, Professor Dean at KIT Bhubaneswar. Dr. Matini Sellatu Rai, Professor, HW University, UK. And my friend, the guest of honor for the today's inaugural program, Dr. Sujan Raju, and my colleagues on the dais, Professor Raju, Head
Professor Rama Madam, Conference Chair, and other colleagues of mine, Dr. V. Raju, Dr. Dhanalakshmi, professors, deans, the faculty, and the participants of the international conference. On behalf of entire fraternity of this 43-year-old institution, I extend a warm welcome to each one of you to this international conference. Started in the year 1980, the institute with visionary management has been focusing on sending quality outcome to the society. And today, with 43 years of existence, this institution is autonomous by the University Grants Commission, and all the undergraduate programs of this institute are accredited by National Board of Accreditation under Tier 1 format. And added to that, the Government of India MSME has accorded business incubator status, host institution status to this institution. And very recently, the AICTE has sanctioned AICTE Idea Lab of worth 1 crore to this institution. All this happened with the visionary guidance from the management and able efforts from the faculty and staff of this institution. Giving maximum priority to the quality education at this institution, we have been focusing on the research for the last few years. In that direction, Professor N.V. Raman Rao Garu, Director NIT Warangal, has been giving great support to this institution in the capacity of Director NIT Warangal. He has given us an opportunity to get nurtured by NIT Warangal in the form of Memorandum of Understanding, which we have signed 2 years ago. The result of MOU has been clearly witnessed in organizing very good number of faculty development programs for the benefit of faculty of this institute and also the faculty of other institutions. And we are also moving forward in terms of in the area of research. Collaborative research projects have been applied by faculty of KITS Warangal and faculty of NIT Warangal, and we have been successful to a certain extent. We also got 40 lakh project sanctioned by the SERB, and very recently the Department of Chemistry, the faculty has received 22.3 lakhs DST funding. Dr. D. Madhavi Lata, she in fact worked at NIT Warangal in the research laboratory, and we are fortunate that she joined this institution. So the association with NITW has been greatly helping this institution for the last several years. And in terms of creating platforms for the exchange of research, we have been successful in the last 3 to 4 years. My friend Professor Sujan Raju has been giving a great helping hand in organizing international conference at this institute. We are also thankful to Springer for believing this institution that quality conferences can be organized at this institution. This is the 4th international conference being organized at this institute, and we are geared up to take up the future editions of this international conference. I hope the organizers, especially conference chair, Professor Rama Madam, HOD, Professor Raju, and the team, Dr. V. Raju and Dhanalakshmi Madam, then Sridevi Madam and Sunil Kumar, they have done a marvelous job in making this event happen this day, and the conference will be organized for 2 days. I'm sure this is going to provide a great platform to exchange the research ideas of the research scholars, with great hope that this conference will add a lot of value to the researchers. Wishing all the participants all the very best on behalf of this entire fraternity of KITS Warangal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now, I call upon Dr. B. Dhanalakshmi, Assistant Professor in the Department of ECE, to introduce our guest of honor, Dr. K. Srujan Raju Garu.
Good morning to all. It's my immense pleasure to introduce today's guest of honor, Dr. K. Srujan Raju Garu. Dr. Raju is currently working as Dean of Training and Placement and heading Department of Computer Science and Engineering at CMR Technical Campus. He obtained his doctoral degree in computer science in the area of network security. He has more than 20 years of experience in academics and research. His research interest areas include computer networks, information security, data mining, cognitive radio networks, image processing, and other programming languages. Dr. Raju worked on 2 projects funded by the Government of India under CSRI and NSTMIS. 1 copyright and 1 patent granted at Indian Patent Office. Edited more than 24 books published by Springer Book Proceedings of ASC series, LAIS series, and others which are indexed by Scopus. Also authored books in C programming and data structures, exploring to the internet, hacking secrets, contributed to some book chapters in various, published more than 30 papers in repeated peer-reviewed journals and international conferences. Dr. Raju was invited as a session chair, keynote speaker, technical program committee member, and track manager, reviewer for many national and international conferences, and also appointed as subject expert by CEPTAM, DRDO Delhi, and CDAC. He has undergone specific training conducted by Wipro Mission, 10X, and NITTR Chennai, which helped his involvement with students and is very conducive for solving their day-to-day problems. He has guided various student clubs for activities ranging from photography to hackathon. He mentored more than 100 students in incubating cutting-edge solutions. He has organized many conferences, FDPs, and workshops. He has established the Center of Excellence in IoT and Data Analytics. Dr. Raju is a member of various professional bodies and received a significant contributor award and active young member award from the Computer Society of India, and also served as a management committee member, state student coordinator, and secretary of CSI Hyderabad chapter. Presently, he is a research consultant to a few engineering and pharmacy colleges and a mentor of T Hub Telangana. Thank you for giving this opportunity.
I cordially invite Dr. Srijan Raju sir to address the gathering.
Good morning to the August gathering and the dignitaries on the dais, and the participants, authors physically present over here, and few are attending the inaugural session online. So I heartily welcome all of you for this 4th International Conference on Computer and Communication Technologies 2K 2022. So it gives me immense pleasure, and especially thanks to the organization like 43-year-old organization, so which is coming forward to organize wonderful conference every year in the last 3 years when we are looking at that. So tremendously, my observations just I would like to put in front of you people. So here I would like to give a big round of applause to the organizing committee of this IC3T, the entire department which is led by Dr. Raju sir. So thank you sir for your valuable support. And so the single person is not sufficient to make a conference succeeded. But here in this particular institution, if that single person is there, everyone is behind him. Such a wonderful personality which I have seen in like Ashok Reddy sir. Give him a big round of applause, because without him, I may not come from Hyderabad to here, because there were so many institutions are requesting us to extend the support and give the conferences or host the conferences and all, but still we are not giving it to anybody. So we have given it to the kids, because it is, as we have seen, we have witnessed it in the statements given by Ashok Reddy sir, which is a 43-year-old and which is following a quality process and all. So out of these last 3 years, being a part of editorial board, never ever I have received any call from this institute by saying that please add our paper into this. Can you believe it? You cannot expect that, where conference is hosted by an institution and where institution is not interested to request. But most of the institutions are ready to host a conference and they want to publish their own papers. But this is not the case. That is what we are witnessing today. The 19 states from the India and 11 countries we have received the papers. But it is a challenging task. 2 years back, whatever the conference we have hosted and what is the conference today we are hosting, there are a lot of changes were brought by the Springer. Couple of minutes back, where our chief guest N.V. Ramana Rao sir was rightly pointing out, this is a rat competition was created between the institutions in aspect of NIRF ranking and all. So most of the colleges wants to conduct a conference, publish a paper so that they can show it and all. So what Springer has done in the sense, from since 2019, whatever the papers were published, they have started cross-verifying all the papers again. If you can imagine, recently the ambient journal, 387 papers have been retracted, which are published in the last 3 years. They have removed, because the authors have participated in unethical practices. They have given the reviewer details of foreign and they have taken their logins and from here they have written a review. But they do not know. Whenever we are going to submit any review or anything, every credentials are going to be captured. We are going to store. But in fact, so by keeping all these particular things, what Springer has done in the sense, now this year onwards, any conference which they are going to apply for Springer as a publication partner, they don't want to give more than 1 volume. Only 1 volume they want to give, and that is also up to the 50 or 60 papers max. And out of these 50 or 60 papers, 10% only the papers can have from the host institution. So that is nothing but 5. So you can think that, so sir, out of 53, how many papers of KITS Warangal conference papers were there? Only 3. I can go up to 5. But no, never I have received any request. If it is standing in the competition and in the ranking of that 53, accept. Otherwise, don't accept. This is the only one word every time. So Ashok Reddy sir and his team never worry about any other things. Only they want quality. This is a wonderful institution, I can say that. So quality remains forever. Then the challenge is in front, because we have received nearly 300 papers. We have to choose 50 papers. So selection ratio is 25%. Our past conference we have selected up to 35%. But out of this 25%, now I have to maintain diversity. I cannot take from the host institution all the papers. I cannot take all the papers from the host state. I cannot take only from one country. There is a restriction. Papers cannot be taken from the Pakistan. Papers cannot be taken from Bangladesh. Out of all these challenges, as Ramadev madam was rightly pointed out, that 19 states, out of that 19 states, we have categorized and we have selected the best papers from the 14 states finally. So these 53 papers are comprising of 14 states from India and 8 countries from other abroad countries and 2 industries. So 2 industry, when I am talking about, Hyundai is also submitted a paper. Hyundai company is also submitted a paper. A very, very good paper was there. So these are the 53 best papers we have selected, and we have kept a request to the Springer, but still we haven't got a approval for the second volume. That was the reason yesterday night we have communicated to all the other authors. In spite of submitting their original papers, which are good papers, we are unable to process. So dear friends, please try to understand now. So submitting a paper is one aspect. Getting selection by the particular conference organizing team is also a very typical task nowadays. Because of all these particular competitions and everything, so everything is going to be scrutinized. 3 blind reviews we have done it. But if you are going to look at that this time, what we have done in the sense, every paper is going to clear the plagiarism without references. But if you take these 53 papers, those are having less than 20% with references too. So even we have selected the papers based on the originality, based on their labs associated, how they have done it. And I sincerely thank to the entire organizing team and the reviewer committee of the IC3T, and under the esteemed guidance of Suresh Chandra Satpathy, who has remarkably supported to our this particular conference, and various number of professors from Sri Vidyaniketan, there is Mohan Babu University now, and even Gandhi Institute of Engineering and Technology, and Usmania University and JNTU University. There were so many professors who were extended their support by reviewing these papers. So this is a one particular side of this IC3T, but the other side, when we are going to look at that, getting approval is based on the editorial board. So when we are going to look at the editorial board, really I would like to sincerely thank to the Ashok Reddy sir for providing his wonderful insights, and I would sincerely thanks to the Sellaturai for giving her consent, and Suresh Chandra Satpathy and myself and Ramadevi madam, all we are in the part of editorial board. Now if any mistake is going to be happen, not only the institute, all the editorial board members are supposed to answer. But in spite of that, today all we are witnessed over here, that is nothing but you can imagine, nearly the last 6 months, whatever the effort has been kept by the organizing committee, which is a wonderful, maybe you have never come across that. So they were working everything in the background. So without disturbing their academics, give them a big round of applause. And once again, I am sincerely congratulating the captain sir for giving us this opportunity, sir, Narayan Reddy sir and Ramana Rao sir. Last time also you have given some input, sir, even we have shared that. But along with that, so whatever the last time sir was mentioned, even we have represented to the Springer, and Springer is also now came forward, and I am going to tell you that please go through with the Springer website, so that even not only you can publish your paper into this, because in the conferences the paper can be maximum of 8 to 10 pages. If anybody you are having a good paper which is having a 60-70 pages, you can submit it to the Springer briefs, so that they can release a special book for that particular chapter, and this entire process is going to be completed within 80 days, and which is going to be indexed. So you can, everyone you can utilize that Springer briefs. Apart from that, now Springer has come up with a video articles. So you can create your video, your paper, convert your paper into video article, your experiment into a video, and send it to them, and they are going to publish that particular video, so that you can reach to so many people. Because now we have understanding that even due to the NIRF and everything, which we are understanding that not only one paper which is published in a indexing which is going to be counted, but at the same time, if you are going to get one citation, that one citation also is going to be considered as a one paper, equivalent to one paper. So it is not only the matter of publication, so it is a matter of citations also. Once again, I am putting in front of you that the couple of years back, whatever the ICDET conference we have done, and we have already crossed 500 citations for that. Sir, this is one of the good news for us. So where Springer or anybody, directly they will never give that. They are going to look at your past record. So whatever the papers which we have selected and which we have published, if the number of downloads and the number of citations, if it is not going to be there, the next conferences you are not going to get approval. So in that aspect, this institution is concentrating even in that also, whatever the papers we have selected and outreach of our proceeding. So in this particular aspect, so once again, so I am sincerely thanking each and everyone directly or indirectly who are supported in organizing this particular conference and inviting me as a guest of honor. And once again, I am sincerely thanking and congratulating all the authors and all the organizing committee members. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for your encouragement, inputs, and suggestions. Now, I call upon Dr. T. Sunil Kumar, Assistant Professor in the Department of ECE, to introduce our keynote speaker of this conference, Dr. Mathini Sellaturai Garu.
Good morning to you all. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our today's keynote speaker, Dr. Mathini Sellaturai Garu. Mathini Sellaturai Garu, Senior Member, IEEE, is currently a Professor of Signal Processing and Wireless Communications and Dean Science and Engineering with Heriot-Watt University, Edinburgh, UK. She has been active in signal processing research for the past 20 years and has a strong international track record in MIMO signal processing with applications in radar and wireless communications. She held visiting positions with Bell Laboratories, Horndale, NJ, USA, and the Canadian Communication Research Centre, Ottawa, Canada. She has published over 200 peer-reviewed papers in leading international journals and IEEE conferences, given invited talks, and has written several book chapters as well as a research monograph as a lead author. Her present research includes full duplex systems, passive radar topography, localization, massive MIMO, non-orthogonal multiple access, waveform designs, caching technologies, assisted K technologies, IoT, hearing aids, optimal coded modulation designs using autoencoders, channel prediction, and mmWave imaging and communications. She is a recipient of an IEEE Communication Society Fred Elastic Best Paper Award in 2005, the Industry Canada Public Service Awards for contributions to science and technology in 2005, and awards for contributions to technology transfers to the industry in 2004. She was the recipient of National Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada Doctoral Award for her PhD dissertation in 2002. She was an editor for IEEE Transactions on Signal Processing from 2009 to 14, the General Co-Chair of IEEE Signal Processing Advances in Wireless Communications in Edinburgh from 2015 to 2018, and a member of IEEE Signal Processing and Communication Technical Strategy Committee from 2014 to 2019. We are delighted to have you with us today, ma'am. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
I request Dr. Mathini Sellaturai Garu to share a few words.
So thank you very much, and thank you very much for the introduction, and good morning to you all gathered in KITS Warangal today, and it's nice to meet the Honorable Chief Guest, Professor N.B. Ramana Rao Garu, the Director of NIT Warangal again today. I don't know whether he remembered, but I have had the opportunity to visit NIT and the KIT Warangal just before COVID in 2019, November-December period. Thank you again for your wonderful, for the wonderful visit I had and the wonderful stay I had, which is one of the most cherished visits of mine, and has made me feel all nostalgic now. So I wish I could have been there now with you all in person, but it's still a difficult time to travel, so I wasn't unable to attend. Probably I will be able to attend next year or year after. It is also very nice to meet all other guests, invited guests, and the program chair, staff and students attending the event today. Thank you very much for Dr. B. Rama Devi, the editor, the program chair of the conference, for inviting me to this great occasion. And also, it is also my pleasure to join the event and deliver a keynote later today. And I wish you all the best for a very successful event and a very successful entire Springer Conference 2022, and also a successful edition of Springer based on this conference. I think it will be published later this year. Anyway, thank you very much, and I'll wish you all the best.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
We have one more keynote speaker today, but due to some unavoidable circumstances, Dr. Suresh Chandra Satapathy Garu was unable to join us right now. He will be available in an hour, but anyways, he sent a message through Dr. Srijan Raju sir. Here is the message in his own words. Good morning to all August gathering present in the inauguration and all authors and participants. I apologize for not being present and passing mail message through Dr. Srijan. I take this opportunity to congratulate organizers of the conference for taking lots of efforts to host IC3T. I am confident authors would have a great deliberation and would have useful takeaway from the conference. I shall be glad to speak on my keynote address after an hour or so. I am happy to note that the department is organizing conference every year and promoting the culture of research. Support of college management is praiseworthy for this. I wish I could have come physically this year, but for rising COVID cases, I am constrained. I must also mention here the efforts of head of the department and also my good friend Dr. Srijan for his untiring efforts to see the conference flag off. Once again, I congratulate you all and wish the conference a grand success. This was the message sent by sir. Hope sir will meet up us within no time. Now, I feel privileged to have such a distinguished chief guest, Professor N.V. Ramanarao Garu among us. I call upon Dr. C.H. Sridevi, Assistant Professor in ECE, to introduce Professor N.V. Ramanarao Garu.
Good morning, one and all. It's my pleasure to introduce today's chief guest, Professor N.V. Ramanarao Garu, is presently the director of NIT Warangal. Earlier, he worked as a rector and professor of civil engineering at JN2 Hyderabad. He did his BE in civil engineering from Osmania, MTech from IIT Delhi, PhD and postdoctorate from UK in civil and structural engineering from University of Wales, UK. He has held several administrative posts as a registrar, JN2 Hyderabad, from April 2012 to July 2015, as a principal, JN2H College of Engineering, Hyderabad, from April 2008 to November 2011. As a director, Bureau of Industrial Consultancy Services, JN2 Hyderabad, from September 2003 to May 2006. As a coordinator, Entrepreneurship Development Cell, JN2 Hyderabad, from 2002 to 2004. He has edited 3 books and published 157 papers in national and international journals and conferences. He has organized 12 conferences, workshops, and delivered 15 invited lectures. He has guided more than 60 MTechs, 12 PhDs, and guiding at present several PhDs. He has won several awards, prizes, certificates. To name a few, Outstanding Concrete Engineering Award for the year 2012, Sir Arthur Cotton Memorial Prize in 2012 and 2015, State Best Teacher Award in the year 2011, Best Designer Award for the year 2004. He has been awarded 1998 Commonwealth Fellowship to pursue postdoctoral research at the University of Wales, UK. Young Engineering Award for the year 1995. He has been awarded the 1989 Commonwealth Scholarship to pursue PhD in Structural Engineering at the University of Wales, UK. He has been subject committee member of Telangana State Public Service Commission. On the invitation from the President of Mauritius, he has been a part of high-level discussion on the need to engage the world of art, nature and science in Mauritius. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I request our chief guest to speak on this occasion.
Very distinguished Chairman of KITS Warangal, Captain V. Lakshmikant Rao Garu, the Treasurer of KITS Warangal, C.P. Narayan Reddy Garu, distinguished Professor from Hiriatwat University, Dr. Mathini Salatharai, Dr. Suresh Chandra Satpathy, Dr. K. Sujan Raju, Professor and Head, Department of Computer Science and Conference Organizer, Professor K. Ashoka Reddy, Dr. M. Raju, Rama Devi, Dr. Sunil Kumar, Sri Devi, Dhan Lakshmi, V. Raju. At the outset, let me congratulate the management, the principal, the faculty, staff and students for organizing such a prestigious Springer's 4th International Conference on Computer and Communication Technology. We just heard how much care they have taken to include the papers in this Springer publication. Dr. Sujan Rao just explained how screening has been done and what criteria has been adopted. So we should all appreciate the efforts put in by the conference organizers in bringing the quality. Today, quality is the key. Quality and innovation is the key to success of any particular institute or any particular product or any particular project. In fact, when we say, that you have to publish immediately, you start publishing in paid journals, predatory journals. So it's a very bad practice. So now the NIRF, the Ministry of Education, the UGC, ACT have come up with the criteria that unless you publish in the top 25 journals, it will not be recognized. So the top 25 journals in your field is something very, very important. And how many citations you have and what is the impact factor, what is the H index. So these are the parameters that actually matter in terms of publication. I think you should all be aware. In case you are not aware, I request the principal to kindly create a session on the awareness of quality of publication. It's very, very important. It is not just important to publish, it is also important to publish quality papers in quality. I know it is difficult, but then once you try, you'll do it, you can do it. It's not difficult. I would also like to thank Dr. Mathini Salatharai. In fact, I had the opportunity to visit Hiriatwat University, Edinburgh, and meet Professor BHP Topping. I don't know whether he is still in the department, in the civil engineering department, and I had worked with him. He was my PhD external examiner also. It's a wonderful university. I'm glad that they have been associated with this particular conference. The conference on communication, the title is very interesting, Computer and Communication Technologies, or sometimes we call as ICT technologies. So these are the technologies of the future. In fact, today, the government of India is thinking vigorously how these technologies are going to impact the teaching learning processes in the institutes. Most of you realize that COVID has taught us that online education is very effective and that needs, even if COVID goes away, this technology will remain. So what is now going to remain is hybrid learning. So hybrid learning requires these communication technologies. So today, the biggest challenge all of us institutes have is the speeds of the internet. And tomorrow, whatever is going to happen, we want to have teaching including augmented reality, virtual reality. So these are the technologies that we have to do as a teacher. So the role of teacher is also changing. We are mostly becoming a facilitator, a guide, a mentor rather than a mere blackboard teaching. So everything is changing and it is very important that we get used to these communication technologies, and I am glad that KITS Warangal has taken the initiative of organizing this international conference for the 4th time. I was of course earlier associated, and today also I felt I didn't want to say no because there was some pressing engagement at KITS Warangal, at NIT Warangal, but I have a lot of affection with this college, especially Professor Lakshmikant Rao. I'll expect him a lot because at this age also he personally comes and he mentors the teachers one by one, and I know he was telling me the process. he asks them, what have you done, how you are doing, what is your plan of action. So that is the commitment and dedication with such a senior. So we have to learn a lot from him. Therefore, I feel always I cannot say no to Kids Warangal. However busy I am, I have to find time and come, and that's why I am happy that I am here. I would take this opportunity to once again congratulate the management, the organizers for organizing such a wonderful conference. Please continue to do this dissemination of knowledge and especially motivate the faculty to publish good quality papers. So here the keyword is quality, and try to think out of the box solution. So many disruptive technologies are coming, and we have to be ready for that. Nothing comes announced. Everything you have to be ready as a teachers in the academic institution. You are the main persons. In fact, the National Education Policy 2020 clearly lays a very important role for the teachers in the system. So teachers will have to be strengthened by conducting regularly a faculty development programs. So participate in faculty development programs, participate in these seminars and conferences that will go a long way in improving your. And I'm very happy now that Professor R.V. Chalam from NIT Warangal has joined your institute. He's a very renowned researcher and definitely is going to lead all of you in the right direction, and I'm sure that this institute will further. In fact, Professor Ashoka Reddy was telling how many research projects they have got. I think this college deserves more than what they have got. In fact, keep on trying, and please note that Government of India is very keen to fund such institutes, especially in disadvantaged geographies like Warangal. We are away from cities like Hyderabad. So we want to encourage, institutes, the Government of India wants to encourage setting up of centers, and make use of all the facilities, all the opportunities that All India government has, and try to make this institute as one of the best, not only in the region, in the whole state of Telangana, but it should be one of the well-known in the country also. I am sure with the committed staff that you have, this institute will definitely flourish. So thank you very much, and thank you for giving.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable words. I now request Sri P. Narayana Reddy Garu, Treasurer, Kids Warangal, to speak few words.
All the dignitaries on the dais, participants, faculty members, after the speeches of experts, I have nothing more to add to it. I therefore wish the conference all the success.
Thank you, sir. I request Captain V. Lakshmikant Rao Garu, Chairman, Kids Warangal, to give the presidential remarks.
Today's for the seminar, our chief guest, Dr. N.V. Ramana Rao Garu, and also other guests online, Dr. Mathini Selatu Roy and Dr. Suresh Chandra Satpathy and Dr. K. Surajan Raj Garu, and our organizers, Dr. M. Raju, Dr. B. Ramadevi, Dr. V. Raju, Dr. B. Ramalakshmi, Dr. C. H. Sridevi, Dr. T. Sunil Kumar, and our principal, Professor K. Ashok Reddy Garu. First of all, I congratulate and welcome all the participants to this prestigious conference, because it's called an international conference. So there must be a lot of interaction also.
because the for the academics there is no end. It always begins, and it is a continuous process also. Learning is a continuous process. So whenever we attend a conference, definitely we must learn something new and also go further in the direction. And equally, I am really thankful to all the participants who are attending to this. And also, I am highly thankful to the address delivered by our chief guest, which is that quality and innovation is very important. It is only two words. Quality means you must be able to know what is the definition of the quality and what is the quality you are producing or what is the quality you are doing, the work. And also innovation. When you work, generally you can also innovate something and you can work on that particular direction. Equally, our Rajgaru has given us a lot of information about the publications and videos. And further, I am happy to note that the video is also equal to the publication, which is really, I really surprised, because few days back only our principal was harping on this in this hall, that we should all video our own topic which we are going to take in the academic calendar. So he was insisting that we should also video that. Now I understand how important it is. So we are really learned something in this particular inaugural address, and I am thankful to the organizers and as well as our chief guest and also our guest of honor for having devoted their time and also advised us. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir. Now it's time to release the conference souvenir. I request Professor N.V. Ramanarao Garu, Director NIT Warangal, to release IC3T 2022 souvenir. I request all the dignitaries on the dais to join. I request C.H. Sridevi and Dr. T. Sunil Kumar to join. Move. Moving on to the next phase, may I now request our chairman, Captain V. Lakshmikant Rao Garu, to felicitate our chief guest, Professor N.V. Ramana Rao Garu. I now request Shri P. Narayana Reddy Garu to felicitate Dr. K. Srujan Raju sir. I request our principal, Professor K. Ashoka Reddy Garu, to present a memento to our captain sir and treasurer sir. Last but not the least, I request Dr. V. Raju Reddy, Assistant Professor in ECE, Convener IC3T 2022, to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, madam. Good morning, all. Thank you is such a prayer that cannot be seen or touched. It must be felt by heart. So I am Dr. V. Raju, Assistant Professor, Department of ECE. Feel honored and privileged for getting an opportunity to propose vote of thanks on this special occasion. I stand here on behalf of ECE Department to thank all for their contributions to make KITSW proud. On behalf of the organizing committee, I express my deepest gratitude and heartfelt thanks to our Honorable Chairman, Captain V. Lakshmikant Rao Garu, ex-MP Rajya Sabha, who continuously encouraging us to promote value-based education to the society by conducting national and international events at KITSW. I also thank Sri P. Narayana Reddy Garu, Treasurer, KITSW, for giving such a world-class infrastructure to organize the international levels at KITSW. Thank you, sir. My words are not enough to express the gratitude to the chief guest of today's inaugural ceremony, Professor N.V. Ramana Rao Garu, Director, NIT Warangal, for accepting our invitation in spite of his busy schedule. Sir, your words of simple discussion will also send a research ideas in the minds of teaching community. You are such a great personality, sir. Your presence added grandeur to today's function, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Honestly, no words are strong enough to express my gratitude to Dr. Mattani Selaturai, Professor, Eradwat University, UK, for her keynote delivery on signal processing and wireless communications. She has been a constant supporter of EC department. We are grateful for her support and encouragement in establishing the international tie-up with KITSW. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. I express my thanks to Honorary Chair IC3 2022, Dr. Suresh Chandra Satapathy, Professor and Dean KIT Bhubaneswar, for sparing his time to deliver keynote on social group optimization and its application to image processing, and also providing the context for deliberations during this conference. It has been real pleasure to work with you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now I would like to thank today's guest of honor, editor of IC3 2022, Dr. K. Srujan Raju, sir, Professor, Head CSE, CMR Technical Campus, Hyderabad, who has joined hands with KITSW to organize this conference. He is continuously guided us to shape this conference what we are witnessing today. We will ever remain grateful to you, sir. We thank for being with us today. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Now I thank never tiring Professor K. Ashok Reddy, sir, our beloved dynamic principal, KITSW, conference chair IC3 2022, for his incredible leadership and for the freedom he has given in decision making. Sir has also helped us in obtaining the necessary administrative approvals for organizing the conference at our campus. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. My sincere thanks to Program Chair IC3 2022, Dr. B. Ramadevi Madam, Professor, Department of ECE, for her help and support at various stages that radiated a source of energy within us to carry out IC3T conference works. Thank you, Madam. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Program Chair IC3 2022, Dr. M. Raju Sir, Associate Professor, Head Department of ECE, for his constant help and guidance. Sir has supported in all possible ways to organize this conference at KITSW. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I thank all the authors who have submitted the research contributions to this conference. Thank you, authors. I also thank all the program advisory committee members, reviewers, editors, session chairs, inside and outside of the college, who have really shaped this conference into top class conference. Thank you very much. I am also very much thankful to Professor Dr. G. Raghutam Reddy sir, Dean Student Affairs, KITSW, E. Suresh sir, Associate Professor, and other senior faculty of the department for their valuable suggestions and support for organizing conference at KITSW. I thank all my team members, Dr. B. Dhanlakshmi Madam, Dr. C. H. Sridevi Madam, and Dr. T. Sunil Kumar sir, who has supported me in all aspects for smooth completion of the events in time at KITSW. Thank you very much. Thank you all. At this event of this dimension cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling months in advance. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated, dedicated faculty and student community. It's unfortunate that I cannot thank every teaching and non-teaching community of ECE KITSW by name, but I must place on record appreciation for their untiring efforts and willingness they have expressed to take the completion of tasks behind their comfort zones. Thank you very much. I would like also thank the DTP operator operator D. Ashok Babu for his wonderful support in helping conference related works. Not but least, I would like to thank electronic print media for a splendid coverage of today's events and also for the support to KITSW through the years. Thank you very much. And then, if time is money, then today you have spent millions for us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining this occasion. Have a wonderful stay at KITSW. Happy learning. Enjoy the conference. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. We have come to the end of the program. I request you all to please rise and join for national anthem. जनगणमन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गादा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे. Thank you. Now it's time for the tea break. I would like to request you all to please have some tea waiting for you outside. And we will resume here at 12:10 p.m. Madam. 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 Madam, Sellaturai madam, am I audible?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. Okay, ma'am. Ma'am. Yeah, ma'am, can we start the keynote address?
Sure, okay.
I request all the participants to join for the keynote session by Dr. Sellaturai madam on the topic signal processing and wireless communications. All the participants are requested to join in online in the YouTube link provided. The link is posted in the WhatsApp group. All the participants are requested to join.
Do you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I do hear, but do you see my screen? So can I start now? Everything is ready? Okay, yeah, good morning, everybody again. So thank you for the chance to talk about our research. My name is Martin Iselature. I'm a professor at Harriet University in Edinburgh, UK. So I'm going to talk about sustainable 6G, deep learning for physical layer communications, opportunities and challenges. I hope you can see my screen and hear me well. So if you have any problem, please let me know in the middle. Okay, so we can adjust. So as I said, why we need deep learning for physical layer communications. One of the thing is that you all know that because of the too much carbon emission, we need to reduce the power usage in everywhere. So telecommunications, as you know, that everybody is using now. So it's particularly wireless communications. Now everybody has one or two devices. So reducing the power transmission is really, really critical. So the challenge is to find out new ways of developing communication systems. One of the ideas is using deep learning based physical layer communications. And so what I'm going to talk today is the kind of challenges and the opportunities that we have in designing deep learning based physical layer communications. And how we can actually use deep learning communications to reduce the power transmission by designing better coding and better understanding of the channel, designing better multi-user communication, better way of using the spectrum in much more efficient way. By designing like full duplex networks, and also how these can not only for wireless communication, how these ideas can influence optical fiber networks. And the other thing is the future generations are going to use different frequencies. One of the things you may have heard is the millimeter wave frequency for communications. At the moment we use sub-gigahertz frequencies, mainly under 6G, for 6 gigahertz for communicating through wireless signals. And in the future, in the 5G and the beyond the 5G, 6G and on, there is a proposal to use millimeter wave and terahertz frequencies, and how they are very sensitive to the environment, and how we can actually understand the path loss in various environments for those frequencies using deep learning. So there's some work has been done, and we also actively doing many works in this area, and many other researchers are doing in this area as well. And there are many open issues coming. Deep learning, when we say, and if you have actually used machine learning and deep learning, you know that doing online learning is a challenge. Usually done is offline. You collect a lot of data and do train the machines and then use it. But for wireless communication, we need to be able to do online learning as well. So how do we do online learning is an open area. Typical systems use some feedbacks, like a human brain, like we learn from trial and error. So we get some feedback for our actions, and then we improve ourselves using the feedback. So, the same thing happens in wireless communication. So the feedbacks tell the transmitter how to actually behave better to get a better received signal. So how we can actually use this kind of feedback in deep learning environment. And the other thing is to address latency and space issues. We can easily say that we can use machine learning and deep learning, but it actually sometimes slow, and it needs a lots of buffering of data and also hardware. So how we can actually reduce the latency and the space needs, and also the complexity of these deep learning. I think there are many different ways. The model-based learning, which is a potential solution, but it's still an open area. Another thing is, having enough data to actually, before we exploit this, we need to have sufficient data collections, and many people together come up with different ideas, and we should be able to have a data set for everybody to test on the same data, so we can be able to actually compare the results of different inventions before that can take to a practical level. So how we can actually do. There are other ideas like transfer learning, federated learning, distributed learning, without sharing data, how we can actually just share the model and learn. And there's so many different ideas are emerging. So there's a lot of open issues to solve. So I'm just going to point out a number of open issues in this talk as well. So that was my outline. And now the question is why we need deep learning. Okay, can we use some other thing? Why we need deep learning for physical AI communication systems? So one of the motivation is, until now or the recent future, the wireless communications or telecommunications mainly used for people to communicate. But from 5G and anything coming beyond 5G is going to focus not only for people, but also for things. So everything is just now connected to the network. So we're trying to monitor everything, and also sometimes we're trying to operate things using internet, and also mostly through wireless, because not many of the things can be connected to a wired network. So it is like a hybrid network. So part of the things will go through the wire, and part of the thing will go through the wireless. And also satellite communication is going to play a role. So we are now going to have wireless, satellite, and optical fibers and copper, any sort of wired networks as well together. But to make sure every device that we want to connect to the internet will have sufficient spectral and power efficiency, which is very critical. And also the expectations of the 5G and the beyond has increased. So for example, until now, we when people communicate, we don't actually observe the delay, for a few seconds. Even the link has a delay of a second or more. But when we were trying to connect things, the delay, the latency of the connection has to go to millisecond level. So, so the expectation is 10 times decrease in latency. So we have to connect and do a thing very fast. And the other thing is, because we're going to bring a lot of devices in the network, the connection density has to be, 10 times more to be able to connect and provide the service for the demand that we are seeing. Okay. And so we have another important thing is the spectrum efficiency, because frequencies, like, we use this frequency spectrum to communicate through wireless, but because we are going to have 10 times more connection density and more and more people, and also more and more activities, like watching videos, online videos, people watch sports activities, people play games, and so on. So we need more and more spectrum, but the spectrum is a limited resource, so we need to have much more spectral efficiency. So the expectation for 5G was 3 times improved spectral efficiency. That means we need to send more bits per second per hertz. So within a hertz frequency, we should be able to pump more bits, more information. And also better experience. Okay, people now tolerance with the wireless communications going down. Everybody's expecting a perfect service, So really high resolution videos and so on, also expected through wireless. So the experience, to improve the experience, we need to be able to design a much efficient coding system, for example. And the traffic capacity and the network efficiency also expected to improve by 100 times. So there is so much of demand on the wireless communication system that has been invented. This system been invented for the past 50 years. So we expecting even better service. So we need to come up with novel ideas. So the question is, could deep learning help for us to improve the service? Another thing is why deep learning is, the neural networks been researched for the past 50, 60 years as well. But it wasn't used in the past as much as that we can do now, because we have also advances in computational power. So we have much better computation, for example, GPUs and so on, developed in the recent years, which is really, really good support for developing neural network ideas. And there is a lot of research going in deep learning, inventing new deep learning techniques, coming up with software that actually can run deep learning in much more efficient way, developing hardwares and chips and so on to do, to be able for us to do deep learning in a real-time manner also happening. So the technology has been advancing, and we have sufficient hardware to store data as well. So we can collect data, we can store data because of all these advances. So this is the right time to actually exploit deep learning in many different places. And the question is how we can actually use deep learning. Ideally, deep learning is very useful in many different places. For telecommunications. So, for example, to understand the network performance and to understand, when we have to switch on and switch off a network. So because the base stations, there's so many base stations all over the globe, and every base station takes so much of power to keep that on and cooling the base stations and also cooling the networks and cooling the, data storage and so on. So there are so many activities going on. For example, edge cloud, so to store data that people often use rather than every time you go and pick up from another country, so you can actually store the important data close to your house and so on. So in order to understand the functionalities, the deep learning has been already helping. So there's throughout the telecommunication, the deep learning is helping to improve the usage of power. Well, today what I'm going to talk is how we can actually use deep learning to actually improve the physical layer of the communications. Okay. So coming to physical layer of the communications, how do we actually design physical layer? It's a lot based on mathematical design. It's understanding the environment and also using the mathematics of it. So typically, we can divide this design into 3 different boxes here. Okay, so the first one is the model-based communication system. So this is how we do most of the research. What we do is we're trying to minimize, for example, the power usage. So FX here is the power used to achieve a certain goals, like, power use. These are some constraints. So typically in a communication system, we will minimize the power or spectrum subject to achieving a certain level of performance. Okay, so we formulate this as an optimization problem, and then we find optimal solution based on optimization tools. Okay, typically this is what we do in research. Most of the publications, if you look into it, will follow this model-based communication system. So it usually gives the optimal solution. So it gives us to tell how much we can actually achieve for a certain system. What's the best performance we can achieve. So this is what academics usually study. But when we are studying this, we take a lot of assumptions to be able to come up with an optimal solution. And also usually the solutions are high complexity the way we approach it, but it gives optimal solutions. So that's, understanding what can possibly be achieved under certain assumptions. But in practice, how they do design the communication system is basically protocol based. Usually what they do is something that, sometimes they get inspired by the work done in the model based communication system. Okay, so that gives us the possible optimal solution. Based on the inspiration, we come up with some sort of protocols. Okay, so in order to easily implement this, okay, the system. Usually it's suboptimal. And it's hardly generalizable, so case by case. But it's very suboptimal sometimes. We don't actually use the optimal level of solution in the real life protocol. So, but it's safe, like because we have sufficient way of implementing it, and also sufficient guarantee that the system is going to function without any failures. Okay, so we don't overflow. We just do in a sub way. Okay, but that's the communication system that we have. But with the demand and the increase of Internet of Things and the people using for various applications and high-speed videos and everything going on through the internet nowadays, hybrid events like this and so on, we need much more optimal solutions that are less complex. Okay, and subject to less assumptions as well. So that's where the learning-based communication system can play a role. Okay, so this is usually, rather than designing a model-based, understanding this optimization problem that we feed into a neural network, like how humans learn. Like, we have a huge networks. We have a brain that has a lot of very similar to neural network. They have many nodes, and it somehow learn everything, and then it can be highly versatile, highly accurate, can be low latency once it learns, and it can also consume low power. So that's the expectation. And the idea of using neural network is they can actually bring optimal solution in non-linear setup. Okay, mostly in model-based communication, it has to be convex, and it's mostly in linear constraints and so on to be able to solve for an optimal solution. So we need to take a lot of assumption, but the neural network can take any constraints. And it can be non-convex. Even in a non-convex environment, it can actually give a reasonable optimal solution. So that's why we prefer to go with the learning-based communications. So when it comes to learning, there are two ways of doing learning. One is the machine learning, and the other one is deep learning. So what's the difference between machine learning and deep learning? So the machine learning, usually what it does is it does partially, it's partially understandable learning. Okay, so it's not a black box, not a fully black box learning. In the sense, what we do is, if we want to understand, if we want to train a network that can understand cars or specific models of cars, or an object recognition, what we do in the machine learning is we extract features. Okay, for example, the wheels and the shapes and so on. So, even colors and different things of features that we can extract from this car, and then feed into a smaller network, which will learn to identify whether this is a car or not, or model of the car or not. And, you can actually train a network to identify different features of the car. So that's the machine learning. So it's not a fully black box oriented one. So we actually assess the network to learn something. But on the other hand, deep learning is just like a bigger network, but we don't assess this network. We just give pixels. Okay, so this is like an image. You just give a pixels, for example. Okay, it can be a certain size of or certain number of pixels that we can extract from this car, and then we feed that pixels as input to here. And this machine will do both feature extraction and learning. We don't say the machine to say that, there are 4 wheels and this shape of the car and so on to recognize it as a car, but rather we let the network to learn it itself. Okay. So why we choose deep learning over machine learning is because of the performance that we observed in the deep learning. So if you have more and more data to train, okay, so the x-axis shows the amount of data that grows, okay, and the y-axis the performance growth. And you can see with, up to certain level of data, the machine learning can outperform deep learning. So, okay, if you have more data available, more and more data available, that you can see the deep learning has a quantum leap and it can actually perform extremely well compared to machine learning. Okay, so machine learning is limited because of our extraction of the features, but the deep learning is not limited because when we give more and more data, it can actually, and bigger and bigger network as well, it can actually learn better way. Okay, so that's why the interest in deep learning is growing. So how this kind of resonate for the physical layer communication system? So the physical layer communication system, for example, say if we feed some signals, okay, so in phase and quadrature phase waves, so that's our communication signals. And how do we actually use the machine learning based communication system is we extract features. For example, we extract the modulation, fingerprints, and various different carrier, different features. Okay, and then feed into a smaller network to recognize modulation or recognize, fingerprint device and recognize which carrier the signal is coming from and various different things. Okay, so we have to extract features. So in order to do that, every different job has to be done using a different feature set. And it can actually increase the hardware and maybe become difficult to do in real time. Way. So on the other hand, if we can develop a deep learning based system, we just have to feed the input to a bigger network and train it. The network should be able to do multitask in the same network. Okay. So we can train a network which can actually identify the modulation order and identify the device number, identify the subcarrier number and everything, without us taking extra features and feeding in. We just feed the input data. Okay, so one of the disadvantage where it's going to be, the network is going to be huge. So pre-training has to be done. The pre-training is difficult. We need to have lots of data. But if we can actually approach that, and if we can actually design this extensive network in a smaller chip or something like that, then we should be able to outperform machine learning based on if we use deep learning based communication systems. So these are the motivations that we use. So that given that motivations, now we can go into the challenges in physical layer communication system and the opportunities using deep learning. Okay. So one of the first challenge that I'm going to showcase the coding, modulation, and source encoder. So this is basically designed, the very first digital communication system model designed by Shannon and Weaver in 1948. Okay. So what they did, this is the digital communication. So before this system was invented, it was analog communications only. Okay, so the Shannon, you all know Claude Shannon, who invented the digital communications and information theory. He actually came up with this structure. So where he said that if we can digitize like binary form for any data, it can be speech, video, any sort of analog thing, that we have to just digitize as ones and zeros, binary. Okay, so he was the one introduced about binary. So anything that we just make it as ones and zeros, it's going to be a huge number of ones and zeros, and it will be very difficult to transmit because it will need a huge amount of bandwidth. Okay, so what he said, we need to compress it. Okay, Shannon has given us a level of compression rate as well. Okay, because there's huge amount of ones and zeros, we should be able to compress it. So that's called source encoder. So we remove the redundancy somehow. Okay, and then we need to transmit over a channel. It can be wired or wireless, but what happens is during the transmission there will be noises added. So basically the ones and zeros, the bits will be flipped. in a certain rate, depending on the noise of the channel. So we need to be able to recover that noise at the receiving end to be able to decode the signals. So what he said is, okay, we need to design a channel encoder, which basically introduce some redundancy to maximize coming distance or minimum distance between code words. Okay, so we just introduce some redundancy using algebraic way or pseudo-random way. So these turbo codes, LDPC codes, and so on that you've been working as the channel encoder. And then once the channel encoder, they do a modulation. So it's maximize the equivalent distance. You could just put the encoded symbol in a modulation in IQ plane. Okay, so when we design the modulation, we're trying to maximize the equivalent distance between 2 points. So we should be able to recognize these different points, even in noise. Okay, without making an error. So these are the things he introduced. So they did these logs, and then it's transmitted at the receiving end, the demodulator for modulation, and channel decoder for channel encoder, and the source decoder for source encoder. So all these events can be recovered without losing any information. So the whole idea. So what we transmitted X will be received at the receiving end exactly the same replica of it. Typically in the channel model, there is a feedback as well. So the feedback is in a way it's synchronized, like, if you wanted to feedback some information, what the possible capacity that we can transmit, or what's the possible channel that we want to transmit in a fading channel environment, we can use it feedback. So this is basically the channel model for communication system, but that was invented now about 70 years ago. But that supported up to 4G, but in the 5G, we need to be much more efficient way of doing this. One other thing we know that rather than designing source encoder, channel encoder, and modulator individually, if you can design these together in an optimal manner, we can achieve better spectrum efficiency and power efficiency as well. So, but doing these together is a very difficult task. People have tried, for example, people do coded modulation design, so design the channel coding and modulation. Typically, you may have heard the trellis coded modulation and block coded modulation. These are the typical ways of doing it. So what they do is, when we were doing encoding, we were trying to do the modulation also together. Okay, so take k bits at a time as a block, and then we do some sort of nonlinear mapping to do the constellation points that includes the coding aspect as well. Okay, so the modulated points has to be like QPSK or 16 QAM or 64 QAM, but the mapping is somewhat nonlinear. So it's joint encoding and joint decodings are typically complex. So in the trellis, what they do is we use a trellis sort of, thing, that trellis coded modulation design. We employ a trellis to specify the dependency of each code words. Like, the continuous code words will have some sort of dependency, and one code word will be depending on the earlier code words, and it has to be designed to maximize the minimum squared equivalent distance in the constellation. Okay, so this can be actually achieved using trellis. So the trellis, it carry out the code words in a certain path, so they are dependent on each other, and then we can be able to decode it. But this is really complex. So people have designed in a certain level, but it's very rarely used in practical system as well, because we can actually achieve a certain amount of designs by hand. And the other way of doing is coded modulation. So bit interleaved coded modulation is very popular. In this setup, what we do is take a bit, and then we do the coded modulation in nonlinear mapping. Usually we can use interleaver in between these mappings, and but this is much easier to design compared to trellis coded modulation, but bandwidth efficiency is higher for trellis coded modulation. So this is the bandwidth efficiency of this system is lower, although the design can be easier. So, but they have limited use because of the complexity and the less bandwidth efficiency. So in this framework, whether we can do better block coded modulations, and the neural network can actually help And the neural network can actually design block-coded modulation in much more efficient way. Not only for the block-coded modulation, but also when we design neural network, we can actually take many other aspects. For example, distortions, hardware distortions, which actually can bring the performance down in conventional system, but in neural network, when we are learning a system, we can actually learn the hardware imperfections together with learning coding and modulation. And also, over the years, we have developed multi-user communication, full duplex communications, and so on to improve the spectrum and power efficiency of a communication system when there are multiple users using the same spectrum. So these places are very difficult for conventional way of designing. So, but we have observed the neural network, deep learning based designs can outperform the conventional designs. And the other thing is waveform design. Nowadays, like, because the spectrum is used for many different applications, including like radar, communications. So we're trying to use the same spectrum for radars. Okay. And also for telecommunications. So we have to design waveform such a way that it can support radar and communication at the same time. And also, IoTs and so on coming different waveform design. So these waveforms can be designed using our deep learning as well. And also, when we were training, we can actually set the best parameters for the communication system, because until now we do these parameters by doing either mathematically or optimization based mathematics. They are extremely complex when the system grow with complexity, so we cannot do by hand, we cannot do by computers using optimization, but the learning can actually learn this aspect much more efficiently. So that's where we're going for machine learning. So having said that, so how we going to look into a number of cases of deep learning. Okay, so one of the thing is autoencoder based coded modulation design. Okay, so if you want to understand much more about autoencoder based coded modulation research, it was introduced in 2017 by somebody called Tim O'Shea. He was with Bell Labs, Nokia Bell Labs. He used autoencoder to design the communication system that designed by Shannon and Weaver in 1948. So almost after 70 years, he designed a new communication system that's kind of a neural network encoder and neural network decoder. So the coding and modulation can be combined as a transmitter of the autoencoder, and the demodulation and channel decoder can be combined as a receive end of the autoencoder. So it's a neural network. So it's a neural network transmitter, neural network receiver, and there is a feedback. This feedback is to train this network, so end-to-end training. Usually we do train using cross-NLP loss minimization. Okay, it's a typical neural network. It's the same way that you train a neural network we have to train. So we'll take k bits at a time, and then it has to give the same k bits at the receiving end, and there is channel and noise in between this encoder and decoder. We had to incorporate that, and then we minimize the error by training. And then this network will converge to a system that can actually perform better than this conventional Claude Shannon model. Ideally, you can include the source encoder in this design as well. Okay, so initially it started with channel encoder and modulator. Eventually, people started including source encoder. So the whole system can be a neural network. And just to give you a little bit more idea about what is this autoencoder. Autoencoder is a neural network. Okay, so there is a number of neural nodes, and you can feed the input here, and usually it takes a larger dimension of input data, and then it brings to a latent phase, which is a compressed form. Okay, and then in the receiving end, it just expands from compressed form to decoder. So you can actually imagine this as like a source encoder, like, remove the redundancy. And then if you want to recover it, you can be able to recover it from the, suppressed data in the latent space. So this is usually the autoencoder structure. And people who doesn't know anything about neuron, so the every neural network has these neuron nodes connected with number of weights from every one of the inputs. So here is the neuron. Okay, so this circle here is the circle here. And this neuron is very simple in the sense you have inputs and each of the inputs will be weighted using different weights, and there is a bias. Okay. And this is called artificial neuron. Okay. And this result of this artificial neuron usually goes through an activation function, sigma. Sigma is a nonlinear function. Okay. And the output, omega here, is given by this equation. It's a very simple thing, each node. So each of the node will be doing something like that. And number of nodes in a vertical line is called a layer. Okay, so there's multiple layers in any neural network. Okay. So this is just to give you a little background if people who doesn't know what a neural network is. So we just use nodes and number of layers to design this communication system now. Okay, so the theta here is the weights and the biases, and US is the input, and XS is the output. Okay, and this output goes to the channel as received as YD, so there will be noise added as well, and then it will go through the decoding part of the autoencoder, so it's just kind of suppressed space, and then it's going to expand it, and the output of this is going to be soft. Okay, so it's likelihood. It's a soft output. It doesn't have to be hard output. Okay, it's a value between 0 and 1 usually. Okay, and this is a typical communication system. So we feed this network with YD and we get this soft likelihood output. This soft likelihood output should be, when we take a hard decision, should give us what we are transmitting. So that's the idea. And this network can be trained. Okay, so what happens in neural network is usually we take a lower dimensional input, take it to a higher dimensional space. Okay, just usually if we have n complex symbols, okay, that mean complex symbols mean we will have 14 n is 2n dimensional real dimension. Okay, so when n is equal to 7 complex symbol, we will have 14 real dimension. Okay, so any binary data can be represented in a very high dimensional space, so we can actually maximize the equilibrium distance between any 2 points. That's how the neural network achieve better performance. Okay, I hope that makes sense, because it's obvious when we separate multiple points in a higher and higher dimension, we will have much more space to separate them out. Okay, if you want to if you bring that into 2 dimension, they might fall on top of each other. But if we expand to multi-dimension, they won't fall on top of each other. So we can be able to distinguish each of the code words in much more efficient way in the neural network. And the other thing is, when we design neural network, we will use multiple layers. Okay, so there's input layer, there's hidden layers, and there's a latent layer, and then hidden layers, and then output layer. So this is how we do this. Okay. And there is a loss function we define, and I'm going to define that. Typically the loss function can be minimizing mean square error, or in communication system we prefer cross entropy minimization to get optimal performance. So the idea, and then each of the node will have a nonlinear activation function. Typical nonlinear activation function in autoencoder is a ReLU. So it's a very simple one. You can use any nonlinear function that can give you the best performance. The idea is the data set that we're trying to identify or classify can be nonlinear. For example, this green line. Okay, if you have, because of the nonlinear activation function, the separating the margins in a nonlinear way is much practical. Okay, if you don't have this nonlinear activation function, what will happen is we will separate using straight lines, and that will become suboptimal. Okay, so in a nonlinear scenario, when the neural network can perform much better compared to conventional things, because most of the time in the conventional we approximate everything to linear, or we linearize, or we sublinearize things to be able to get a solution. Okay, so this is the proposed architecture by Timosha. So they take input bits, and there's number of dense layers with the nonlinear activation function. And then usually, because in the communication, the power normalization is critical. So unlike the normal neural network, in a neural network for communication system will have a power normalization layer. So that means that we actually normalize the power. We don't pump too much power in the, we have to transmit a signal. So we have to actually make sure the power that we transmit is monitored. Okay, and the receiving end, what happens is there is something called lambda layer they include. That means, in some neural networks, we need to learn the channel. Okay, the communication system, we learn channel every time because the fading channel can actually change with the time. So we should be understanding what the fading channel is. So we usually do a channel estimation, for example. So this lambda layer is included to estimate channel, and then there's dense layers, neural network layers, and dense layer with sigmoid activation function. So usually dense layer with previous ones use ReLU, but the last layer will use sigmoid to get the soft probabilistic outputs. Okay, and then we use error propagation to train this network as well. Error back propagation. Okay, so you can actually look at this paper for details. And the other thing is, the telecommunication, there are two cases. One is the normal block-coded modulation where we assume perfect channel state information. Okay, so in the way we had to send pilots to learn the channels for every block. But in communication, you also know there differential block-coded modulations can be designed. Okay, that means we don't actually send pilots to learn the channel. Okay, so that's in a way spectrally efficient. But if you don't learn the fading channel, the system will be really, really complex to decode. So we need to actually design a differential code at the transmitting end. You probably have learned what is differential coding in your communication system code. Okay, so somehow relate your coding based on the previous coding that you're transmitting. Okay, so it's like a chain of codes that you can actually decode. If you decode one, then you can use that information to decode the other one, and so on. So we can actually do neural network for designing differential block-coded modulation as well. Okay, so that's an added advantage of using neural network. So usually in the differential block coding, they used radio transformer network. We don't estimate channel, but we have a special network that can actually do this differential decoding. Okay, so for typical BCM, we will use a lambda layer to estimate the channel or equalize the channel, but in a differential block-coded modulation, we will use radio transformer to actually decode the differential code. Okay, so we can actually design normal code and differential codes as well. Now, there are two other things that you will observe if you go into literature. One is that when you're coding the input bits, you can code in a bitwise. Okay, you can just feed the bits exactly as it is, or you can feed the input as a symbol. Okay, so it's like a QPSK, a symbol form. So this is represented as one hot vector. So it's like one in one place, the rest of them are 0. But the problem with, you can do this for different modulation as well. When it has a 16 QAM, you can just feed as the input bits, that's bitwise autoencoder, or you make it as a symbol and feed like 16 symbol, where the symbol is. The problem with the symbol-wise autoencoder is the size of the input grows exponentially with k, 2 to the power k size. Okay, so rather than feeding 4 bits, we feed like 16 bits, 2 to the power 4. So initially, people design autoencoder, use symbol-wise autoencoder, but we introduced a bitwise autoencoder, which later we were able to show bitwise autoencoder is much more efficient and also better performance. Okay. So when you design this autoencoder, you can either use symbol-wise autoencoder, where we will use minimize categorical cross-entropy loss, okay, in training. If you use bitwise autoencoder, we had to use binary cross-entropy loss. Okay, so that's the difference. So output, and also the input vector size is smaller for this, and the network effectively will be smaller, but effectively we were able to show this can perform better than symbol-wise. So you can try both symbol-wise and bitwise for different applications. And the training the network, usually, yeah, I mean, it's very typical to train any other neural network. You had to use backpropagation error using binary cross entropy loss, and it will get trained. We need to have sufficient data to do the training as well. Okay, so that's basically the introduction how we do the things. Now I'm going to show some results for different applications. So one other thing is, as I said, any typical real system will have some hardware impairment, okay, some nonlinearities. We usually ignore that, or we learn it using conventional ways to compensate that. So the neural network learning can effectively learn the hardware impairment, and it can give huge amount of gain in power. So this is why I said the 6G, sustainability from power point of view. For this particular application with hardware impairment, this is the maximum likelihood detector in conventional ways, and this is a proposed autoencoder which can learn the hardware impairment, and it gives like 22 dB power gain. That means we have to transfer much less power to achieve the same performance when we use autoencoder based communication system in a hardware impairment, in the presence of hardware impairment. That's one of the case. Okay, and there are papers that you can look into how we can do this work. So other typical problem is the multi-user wireless communication, in the sense, because more and more users are using the communication system, we have limited spectrum. So we wanted to transmit multiple users at the same time using the same frequency, which was not possible until 4G. Okay, in the 4G they introduced non-orthogonal multiple access, we call NOMA. Okay, for two users. So any spectrum, any beam, two users can use the same frequency to communicate at the same time in the NOMA. It also called dirty paper coding in the downlink scenario. So the base station is trying to communicate with multiple users using the same frequency. We were able to show the neural network can actually achieve significantly better than the conventional NOMA. Okay, so the solid lines here is neural network performance, and the dashed lines here is the conventional performance. You can see that, any curves coming in this left-hand side, so less power. It uses less power to achieve the same bit rate. We have a patent which is published. You can also look at it as well if you want to look into this. And the other thing is relay network, because if you want to extend the coverage, usually there are a number of relays in between the base station and the receiver. So the relay node take a signal and then retransmit. Okay, satellite is a relay, so you send a signal to satellite, it retransmits it to another end of the globe. So it's a relay. The problem with the relay is, if you use the same frequency, you cannot either transmit or receive. So you have to use two different frequencies for receiving here and transmitting if you want to continuously do that. That's we call half duplex. But we recently for 6G we are researching full duplex. What's happening is we use the same frequency to receive and same frequency to transmit. It creates self-interference. Okay, it's a huge interference here. So we need to actually effectively cancel this. In this framework, we can show that full duplex amplified for relay network can be designed using autoencoder based, and you can see a huge benefit in the power efficiency, like performance can be achieved using autoencoder. So solid lines usually I'm showing like autoencoder based, the dash lines are like conventional. So the conventional cannot be able to learn this self-interference effectively, but the autoencoder can learn because it's very nonlinear at some extent. So it's much easier to learn using neural network. And another opportunity that we had the opportunity to work with Bell Labs in demonstrating this autoencoder in the optical fiber networks. And people who knows optical fiber, there is a long-standing problem that non-linearities exist in the optical communications. Usually to overcome that, they perform under Shannon limit, very under Shannon limit, because it's very difficult to compensate non-linearities. But we were able to design autoencoders including these non-linearities, and we showed the best performance close to Shannon limit. This red curve is the autoencoder performance. This is a Shannon limit that you can achieve. So we were better than the conventional way when we use autoencoder. Okay, so even a very small gain in the power can lead to extended distances to optical fibers. They're trying to deploy optical fibers under the sea, very long distances, so you had to extend the distance, okay, like satellite. It's a replacement for satellite. So to go to other extent of the globe through optical fiber, extending the distance is a huge benefit. So we were able to demonstrate in a practical system the autoencoder worked better than the conventional one, which we are very proud of as well. Then other things, like I think I'm running out of time soon as well. So other opportunities, millimeter wave, for example. So the next generations need more and more frequency. So now we are going in the sub-terahertz, 30 to 100 gigahertz of frequencies to use communications. The problem with the millimeter wave is they present many challenges because the millimeter waves are very tiny waves. You can imagine a wave that's a millimeter wave size or sub-millimeter wave size. So they can be easily absorbed by small obstructions like tree leaves, and you cannot propagate them very far. Like if there is no trees or no obstruction, then if you form a beam and transmit millimeter wave, it will travel as far as it can go. You can use millimeter wave to satellite communications because there is no obstruction in between. But they can die out in rain, obstruction when it's raining and so on. So you cannot propagate the millimeter waves in the rain. But now the expectation is to use this millimeter wave in a terrestrial environment. For example, this street, you see, a lot of trees, the cars and buildings and so on. So how this millimeter wave propagate in this environment has to be understood. So there were some collected data from Manhattan, and then we use autoencoder to actually learn the dependency of or the path loss phenomena of millimeter wave in a terrestrial environment, urban environment like this. Okay. So we were able to actually show and predict the path loss compared to what is proposed in 3GPP. Okay, 3GPP they use and slope intercept. That's probably the optimal conventional method that we can actually approach. What we were able to show is if we have the clutter the environment, we should be able to propagate the millimeter wave in a better way and with less power loss. Okay, and also we were able to predict dependency of the millimeter wave propagation path loss based on street width, clutter per street, clutter per link, buildings, how the building is going to affect, and so on, based on a deep learning based study. And it is published in this paper now, and you can be able to see the complete work on this paper as well. Now the open issues. I think I have about 5 minutes to talk about these open issues. So we are very, very concerned about deep learning because we are not able to understand how the deep learning works. So these people can actually open up the coding designed by the deep learning to understand the conventional way of measuring coding. For example, equilibrium distance, humming distance, packing density, kurtosis. So it is possible to understand this for the codes designed by autoencoder. And we did, in a certain extent, there's some papers on this, and there's more work to be done on understanding how the deep learning is going to work for communications, like opening up the neural network rather than treating it as a black box. And the other thing is, how do we going to do online training? Because most of the training The current research is focused on offline. You train a network and then you exploit it. But in practical system, you should be able to somehow train the network again and again. Okay, so it has to be an incremental learning. You cannot just do a huge learning on the way. So you have to like very tiny incremental way of learning. So there are some ideas appearing on this, but there are more work to be done. So we also recently published a conference paper on this, and there's not much work in this area as well. And the other one is recurrent networks. How we can use feedbacks to improve the system. Okay, so it's called reinforcement learning. So like a human brain, like if we do fail something, we get some information back to our brain, and then we will be able to do better next time. So if the communication system work based on these recurrent networks or reinforcement network, and there is reinforcement deep learning. So there are many opportunities to improve the communication system using feedback. So how we can actually explore this. The other one is the latency and hardware constraints. Also, we say that okay, we can do learn and do perform better, but there are limitations because the buffers in the communication system are very small, and hardware chips are very we don't yet have enough capacity on chips to employ deep learning. So whether there's reduced complexity networks, reduced latency networks, that means that we should be able to train a network much faster than the current state of art. So there's huge amount of work can be done on this, developing better hardware and so on. The other one is the model-based learning versus deep learning. So the typical communication is a model-based communication. We know a lot of the communication, like Shannon, based on Shannon theories and so on. A lot of the work has been done over past 70 years on developing model-based communication system. The data-driven deep learning, a new one. So that's what we are trying now. That we can combine the data-driven deep learning plus model-based. So it's a new area coming called model-based deep learning frameworks. That means we use the past conventional knowledge plus some learning on top of it to improve the system. I think this is much more likely to be deployed. So there's much more work to be done. There's different combination can be tested. There's many theses can be written on this topic as well. Because everybody can come up with different ideas, so we can actually see the most possible solutions and what's the best solution can be. There's some work coming in this. We also been doing some of the work, and you can actually look into these papers. And finally, the data collection. So for image processing purposes, there are, for example, vision community has data sets that people can use it to train their coming up ideas and networks and so on. But for communication society, there is not much data available. So can someone collect data and share with other people? So there is some places that you can actually see some data is posted. Okay, so there more and more data must become available for people to do more research on this, so that people can actually contribute to this. And there are a number of papers that we published at the end as well. There are other people who have been publishing as well, so you can actually look at them. And having said that, and thank you very much, I think we used most of my time, and if you have any questions and if there is time, I will be happy to answer. I'll hand over back to the conference and
Madam,
yeah.
this is Dr. B. Ramadevi.
Yeah.
Could you please explain me applications of deep learning in communication systems? Little more applications in our
Power allocations. There are many applications coming in power allocations, and efficiently using the network, efficiently switching on and off the base stations depending on the traffic models and so on. So in addition to the physical layer challenges, there are many challenges in the cross layer, MAC layer, and also network layer as well. And the other thing is security, like encryptions and so on also can be looked at in the machine learning perspective.
Good morning, ma'am. This is Dr. Shivapriyanka.
Yeah. Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, feel free to email me if you have further questions or if you wanted to, get some help or anything if you want to work on this topic. This is one. No, just an example. So usually you can decide the NEC-7 is it's a coded modulation. So you have 7 symbols together designed as a coded modulation, but it can be any number. It can be 10 or 20 or 100. But when it goes to 100, it become really really complicated. So. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question in the sense these sort of network can only design short block coded modulations. So what we do is we usually, if you want to apply LDPC codes out the code, you can use outer codes as well. Yeah. So there are papers. I think I have recommended papers. They have a bit more details on this. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a pleasure and thank you very much. And I wish you all the best throughout the conference. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'll stop sharing so you can move to the next one. Thank you. Bye.